All right, everybody, welcome to the 343rd edition of the Holy Backboard Podcast. I am Dustin here in Rip City, and I got my man.
Sage kicking it live and direct. About to talk about these Thompson twins and their really impressive skill sets. But my God, allergies are such a pain in the ass to deal with. Your boy is definitely affected this podcast for sure.
It's the trade-off, right? You get beautiful weather, the flowers and trees are blooming, and you got to deal with the allergies. That's just comes with the territory, my guy.
Yeah, I feel it, but I woke up. I was like, why does my head hurt, and why is my nose just leaking phlegm and what it's not? And then yeah, so your boy's feeling it, but I'm pretty excited about these two prospects. So I'm willing to work past the ailment that I am dealing with right now.
You got the allergy podcast, like the Jordan flu game coming up for everyone here. But yeah, let's kick it off. We are talking about the Thompson twins, but it is important to separate them because they are two individuals and they are two different prospects,
Mm-hmm.
despite having similar measurements and playing alongside one another for their entire careers. Let's kick it off with Amin Thompson first. Amin is the higher rated of the two. If you go by the consensus, he is fourth on the Ringers big board and fourth on Tankathon's big board. I don't think you'll see him as high as two, but I mean, his range is like 3 to 5, right where Portland will be
Mm-hmm.
selecting. And if you look at a men 6'7", 215, 20 years old, averaged 16, 6, and 6, nearly a block, 2.5 steals at overtime elite this year. His official draft measurements came in at the combine. 8'7" standing reach, 7-foot wingspan. He has all of the measurables that you're looking for in a wing, except he's not a wing,
He
Sage.
he is a definite point
This
guard.
is where the freak athleticism and freak comparisons come from. And he's maybe a player that we've never seen before because he projects to be a floor general, a point guard. You're
What was
looking
his
at
standing reach again?
his standing reach was 8 feet 7.5 inches.
When I was at my athletic prime and I wanted to dunk the ball, I was on a 9 foot rim. He could basically tippy toe it and dunk it. And when I was just like using every bit of athleticism my poor body had to try and do basic rim grazing dunks.
And I know when we discussed our big boards, we were talking about maybe how the athleticism was a bit oversold. And I do think some of it is the camera angles that Overtime Elite uses because the imagery came out from his workout in Portland and he's soaring. Like
Yeah,
there's a still photo of him just standing still and he is literally levitating
mm-hmm,
in the air. So the athleticism is real, unreal first step. Like
mm-hmm.
this is, we talked about this class being completely unconventional. And he, I think, along with Victor Wembanyama, stand alone, right? You've got a 7'5" guy who moves like a guard, and you have a 6'7" big who passes like a guard. And he's got insane floor vision. He just sees the floor. He just moves so smooth, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just you get some guys who are really fast. And you're like, oh, they can run like a 4.2 40, but in football, they don't know how to use that speed.
Yeah.
They don't know how to accelerate or decelerate. Amen knows how to use his athleticism.
I would
And
say that dribbling, he just he because he has that outrageous first step, that is it's problematic because he doesn't know how to control his dribbling when it goes at like that level of speed. So like we're seeing that his blazing speed is an issue for him, which that's pretty crazy to think about like how athletic this dude is. He
and
can't
even like
dribble
the
right.
dribbling though, I'm not as concerned about it because you look at Giannis. Giannis isn't a great dribbler, but because he's so tall and lanky and bouncy, he takes 2 steps from the 3-point line, he's at the rim. Right. He just there's certain players that defy logic. And he could be one of them. Like he really is like, a freak. Like Bruce Feldman, I don't know what publication he's at anymore, but he always does like an annual college football, like this is the freaks issue. If
Mm.
they were to do it for the NBA, Amen Thompson is getting a profile feature because he is that crazy in terms of the measurables, the skill set, what he's able to provide at the height. Like we just haven't seen this before. And the question marks surrounding him, I think there are two. One is the competition level. Overtime elite is
Mm.
relatively unknown. That can be, I could argue that either way, right? We've
Mm.
seen going back to Giannis, we saw him dominate like 13 and 14-year-olds in Greece. I'm sure they're not that young, but that's what they look like compared to
Into him, yeah.
this freak, right? And we've also seen players at the collegiate level absolutely dominate, like Michael Beasley,
Yeah.
and just completely flame out of the league. So competition can be argued either way. He is a bit older for this draft cycle. They are 20 and a half years old. Honestly, Shaden Sharp is actually just about 6 months younger than those twins, and he's already had a full year under his belt. The other thing is the shot, and
Yeah.
I was going to the Thompson twins to me are like that kombucha girl video where she takes it for the first time and you just see the range of emotions, the roller coaster of this is delicious. What the hell am I drinking? I don't
Mm.
what. And at the end, she's like, yeah, it's good. That's where I'm at with the Thompson twins. I started out being very intrigued, and I was like, oh, a men's shot is completely broke. I can't. I'm out. And then you start to see clips of the form improving, and then you get tantalized all over again with all of the athletic traits that he has, along with the floor vision. And I am on board with Amen Thompson because if their work ethic is anything like how they interview, like they are
Mhm.
already so polished and
Oh, they're so
professional.
polished, yeah.
That is the bonus of going to overtime elite, and that's I believe that's what Ausar mentioned in his post draft interview workout was he learned like you don't just joke around all the time. You got to be on time for meetings, for games. Like this is you're getting paid. Like this is serious
Mhm.
business for them, and they're so intelligent. Like
Mhm.
it comes off of them as they speak. You're captivated by their answers, and it has been reported they have fabulous work ethics. And if you look at earlier tape versus now,
There's
there's
a
definitely improvement
huge.
in the shot.
Mm.
They're never going to be lights out shooters, but you don't necessarily have to be when you have those physical traits. Like Giannis, even Ben Simmons when prior to all
When he
of
was good.
Zion.
Yeah.
If you have a certain level of physicality and athletic advantage, you can lack in even in shooting. And there's only like 1% of players that can do that, maybe even a smaller amount. But I like that he is a willing shot maker and that the form is improving. So I don't think just because it may look not optimal now doesn't mean it's never going to improve. So always keep that in your mind when you're looking at these prospects. And, if Portland does end up with Amen Thompson, he and Shaden would be the most physically gifted, athletic backcourt the NBA has ever seen. It could literally break the league. And like already envisioning those lob passes between the two out on the break is something just incredible to imagine.
Mhm. Yeah, he has all of the passing shots that you want, like from a Chris Paul, from a Tyrese Halliburton to a LaMelo Ball, but he's also, you know, top tier athlete, having the skill set to potentially, revolutionize the position of lead initiating guard. So it's watching him on that offensive end just initiate is it's going to help everybody involved on whatever team he gets drafted to. I think Shaden Sharp would be instantly, he'd move ahead a few tiers in his development, having a guy that literally can just make every single pass to him and be the athlete that can run with him on fast breaks. I think transition, if the Blazers got Amen Thompson, I think our transition game would be the best in the league. And I mean, watching the Blazers walk it up on times where we should be running, it's going to be a complete and total change in what the Blazers are if they drafted Amen Thompson. Like, you can't be like I mean, we talked about it before, but Damian Lillard and Amen Thompson probably can't play on the court together because Amen's shot isn't good enough in the half court, and he needs to have playmaking reps. Like his vision's awesome, but there's other things about being an NBA playmaker that you need to be able to rep out in a competitive game. So you know, and having Chauncey Billups as his head coach, it could be a humongous negative too, being that he doesn't seem to have the creativity that Amen Thompson needs. So if we drafted Amen, there has to be specialized things that only Amen can do, like being the lead playmaker. So, if we happen to get Amen, it's like, okay, this is the beginning of a lot of big decisions for the Portland Trailblazers, because I really can't envision a world where offensively we work with Dame and Amin playing, major minutes together. It just you're hurting one to help the other, and I think that would be a bad, like, that's absolutely not helping Dame in the current sense. You
Yeah,
it,
I don't think Portland should make a draft decision based upon this. Sounds sacrilegious. They shouldn't make a draft decision based upon just Damian Lillard. Because if you're keeping the pick, you're essentially saying we value the young timeline rather than Dame's, and we want to keep you along Dame, but this pick is too valuable, or we didn't receive enough offers. I think they should take the best player available at 3, regardless. If it means Amen is playing a little bit less, coming off of the bench, whatever, fine. But you don't want to be kicking yourself down the road like Portland did in '05 when they passed on Chris Paul because they had Sebastian Telfair. Now, I'm not saying Sebastian Telfair is Damian Lillard or vice versa, but they should have just taken that best player and let it work itself out. Like, I still think there are abilities and opportunities to play together, not a lot because of the positional size. Like, he can still defend on the other end of
oh,
the
I think
court.
defense is going to be fine. I just think
And
offensively in the half court.
it may also open up opportunities for Dame to play off of the ball a little bit, especially if you're trying to limit his minutes and his usage over the course of a season as he ages. And so that would maybe be a way to do so. So it's not a perfect fit. But again, if you believe Amen Thompson is going to be the best player in this draft or a top 3 player in this draft 5 years down the road, take him. Take him and you figure it out as you go. Don't take him because you don't think that fit with Dame is perfect, because if you're keeping this pick, you're picking for the next decade. Like, this pick needs to be a cornerstone for the next decade. So don't make a short-term decision that really is going to impact the long term. Defensively, I think he's going to be even a better defender than maybe he's given credit for right
Yeah.
now. I think, you're playing overtime elite. The Twins are clearly the best players in the league. Just given the athleticism, the measurements, and I think the will to win and get better. I don't think he's as good of a defender as his brother Ausar, but I think he's going to be a plus defender
I
in
think
the
the
league.
buy-in if he buys in to the defensive schemes, he could be an all-world defender. It's
Yeah.
just about accepting the buy-in from him to focus on
And
that.
from everything reported, the buy-in will be there. So that's another thing where, like, yeah, he's not maybe like a Case and Wallace or even his brother right now. But again, you're not drafting right now. Like, you're drafting a man for what he could be in 3 to 4 years, and then you really start to build your roster out. We've touched on a men. Let's move over to his brother, Ausar.
Yeah.
And Ausar is ranked right below him, number 5, both on the Ringer and on Tankathon at Overtime Elite. Very similar numbers. Again, 16 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, a block, nearly 3 steals per game.
Jesus.
I believe he was MVP of their championship series. He
He,
had
he he took over during that playoff series for
he
sure.
had the game-winning 3, which was a really contested 3, but he knocked it down. Very similar measurements, of course, to his twin brother. He's 6'6" without shoes, 8'8" standing reach, 7-foot wingspan, slightly heavier, 4 pounds heavier, 218 pounds. And he projects more as a traditional wing than a point guard, but he does have secondary playmaking abilities. I think of him more as a connective piece on the offensive end of the floor. I don't think you're ever going to run offense through him, Sage. And I think you are hoping he can be on offense. I think super duper three, three and D,
I
right?
don't know about that one, bud, because I think
I
his.
don't think you want him. I don't think you can run offense through
I mean, you can't.
Ausar.
I wouldn't run all of my offense through him, but I think that he is with his playmaking in terms of dribbling. You can't just have him sit in the corner. I
I
think that
didn't
he
say
has
so. I think
no.
3 and D gets a negative connotation. It just means you're there to hit either open shots or he can be a 3 and D plus secondary playmaker. But I don't know if like if you have like Shaden would be the one. I don't know if he can be a second option on offense. Third, probably. But
I
I
would put
still
him at I would put him at the two because what he can do with the ball in his hands in terms of setting himself up for his own shot. Like again, there's only two dudes with a big bag of offensive tools right now with the dribbling, and that's Scoot Henderson and Soar. So I think that if I was the coach, I think the way you make him a super duper star is you incentivize and encourage him to do more playmaking because his handle is just awesome. So if you can make him, I think the biggest weakness in his playmaking is the vision between, creating the mismatch offensively and then him passing the ball. So if he had that playmaking, I mean, and Amin, he's awesome at it. He's like this is what he was put on earth to do is be a playmaker. So Ausar really hasn't had the chance to be the number one guy on any of his teams. But if it was me, I'd be like, bro, your handle is so good. You have to be part of the offense with the dribbling. Like I've seen him do some amazing dribble packages and like do the Iverson dribble, do hang dribbles, sham god. Like he's I would be very happy with him being a major part of my offense with his dribbling and decision making. I mean, of course his shot is so much better than his brother's, like, but the way I see him breaking down defenders, I think he wins one-on-one matchups just like his brother and probably better because his handle is just so much better. So he's top two on my team, and honestly, he might be running my offense if things go really, really well with his the process of winning and then getting your teammates involved. Because right now he's going for his.
and then defensively, he's
Awesome.
probably one of the better prospects in this draft class.
Yeah. I mean, defensively, I could see him being, in that top as a top team defender. Like that athleticism, like he has the athleticism just like his brother to really make the other team's playmaker just feel so crowded with his athleticism. He can beat him to spots. Like he could anticipate and be a better defender than Drew because Drew moves like kind of a robot. A sort like the way they move is just so special. So he could be like a top tier defender, toppest of tier defenders, plus the playmaking and the shooting. Like in the playoffs, he was shooting 36% on 8 attempts. Like I know small sample size, but like volume shooting, good percentage. So I know that working on playmaking is going to be difficult in terms of passing, but for right now, I have Ausar at 3 and I have Amin at 6, just because Ausar has just so much more shooting than Amin, and then if we can get him to even make Anthony Simons reads, his offense becomes crazy, and I think that he's just as athletic. So him and Shaden would be an amazing pair. And I honestly think Ausar could play with Dame and it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Like the fit for most teams is a lot better with Ausar because of the shooting. But I mean, both Twins are just so talented that if the Blazers end up with one, I'm able to convince myself on a lot of things what they can do. So yeah, these Twins really, I mean, their choice in deciding where they play professional ball is kind of strange now with them going against 16-year-old high school kids, but when you see what they have athletically and game wise, it's like, all right, I'm willing to take that chance on them, being superstars.
Would you agree that Ausar's floor is higher, but Amen's ceiling is higher?
Yes, because I don't. If a man hits, I don't. Player comps might be really difficult to come up with. Ausar, if he hits, I mean, they're still pretty difficult to come up with, but they're still like players that have been him. So yes, but I think of both ceilings are incredibly high. Do you have comps for either of them?
No, I mean it's just silly. I think for some players to comp them out because like I don't know what you would, and anything you say kind of sounds outlandish because the players are so elite.
Yeah, like Ausar could be Tracy McGrady pretty easily with 2 feet that aren't different sizes. You know what I mean? Like he could be Vince Carter relative, like it. And Amin could be a 100th percentile Magic Johnson. I like those sound foolish, but because of the athleticism and the skill, it's like it can happen. For the
Yes.
Blazers, are you more of an Amin guy, even though the beginnings might be a little bit harder to deal with?
Yeah, I like so I have when we did it last, Amen at 4, Ausar at 9, but again, 3 through 9 was very tightly packed, and you could talk me into really any of those 6 players being 3, and you could really talk me into any of those 6 players being 9. So like, don't think there's a super gap between the players or prospects, and there's different reasonings for which. Um, I personally, if you're sticking at 3, I think you have to swing for the fences a bit. And Portland has had such a small backcourt for so long, whether it's Dame and CJ or Dame and Ant. The prospect of having the exact opposite in
Mm-hmm.
Amen and Shaden and how they could play off of one another. And I think you could build a roster around those two quite easily. Like you would have what you needed, and you would not only be set defensively, offensively. That I mean, Shaden moves so well without the ball. He doesn't really need the ball in his hands to be effective. He can play with the ball in his hands. I just putting a tall playmaker, something we have never. I mean, it's probably since post prime Scottie Pippen took over the reins in like 2000 and 2001 is the last time I've ever seen a tall playmaker in Portland. And it would just be so fun to watch. So I've got Amen. I would lean Amen. Now, if you trade down, let's say you value Ausar higher than Amen, but everybody else doesn't, and you want to trade 3 for 6 and 11, by all means take Ausar at 6, and see what you can have there. Like you said, I do agree it is a easier fit with Dame at the moment. I
Well, if you
do
want Shaden to be the alpha,
I
having a
think
Ausar,
Yeah, I think
he,
Shaden's the alpha regardless. Like that's my guy. Like I would take Shaden number 2 in this draft. I think he's sensational, obviously. Um, I would say I've heard this one because I've watched tons of video scouting reports on these Twins. I do think it's going to be a steep learning curve for them coming from overtime elite to the NBA. I don't think we're going to get a Shaden Sharp situation where he just kind of comes in and just looks smooth and effortless. Like I think Shaden's a one of one in that sense. So whatever team does draft them, I think it might make sense to have maybe a veteran ahead of them in the pecking order, not like a super duper veteran, but like just a solid Josh Hart-ish type of talent
but he's
ahead
gonna
of
make like
them.
$40 million a year, I've heard.
Well, better them than us.
Oh, I have one more question.
Really quick.
Okay.
So I would have somebody ahead of them in the pecking order. I don't think you start them right off the bat. I think you ease them in, maybe even some stints at the new G League team with in over in North Portland. But I think it's just you want to see progress and progression and try to get them as many reps when you can. Like they're still going to try and win this year, whether they keep the pick or they trade the pick. So can you get him in the blowouts? Can you get him in on the second night of a back to back, maybe against
Rockets.
a Rockets or a
Yeah.
Spurs or just a really kind of dog shit team. Don't expect the world from these. Like I think unless you're Victor or Scoot, maybe probably Brandon Miller, like those three are going to produce right away. Everyone else is going to take a bit of time, and the fans have to be aware of that, and the front office
I
needs
mean,
to buy into that.
Even Shaden, it took a while.
I mean, Shaden had 12 points in like 10 minutes opening night. It was Chauncey was holding Shaden back.
Yeah,
So I mean, let's be real.
Since you brought it up, and this is the question that I wanted to ask. Chauncey Billups is probably going to be on this team for at least a year. I don't know how cheap we are if we want to give, him money to not coach our team in the future. So, but Chauncey Billups is on this team for a while. Who does he ruin more? Because I feel like Amin he could ruin. I feel like a sort of like because he could play off ball, he wouldn't ruin as badly. But Amin just needs playmaking reps so badly, and I don't know if Chauncey Billups will be able to, shepherd a 1-of-1 type of point guard. So, do you worry about the Billups coaching factor at all?
Dude, I worry about Chauncey Billups all the time. I mean, that's terrible. You got all these championship winning coaches out there, and we're stuck twiddling our fingers saying we're running through walls for a coach that's won like 60 games over 2 years. Like it's humiliating, right? Like, so I don't draft based upon who's the coach because I frankly don't think he's going to be the coach for the next 2 years. Like, you just have to hope and pray he doesn't do too much damage. Like if we took Victor, we'd be having these same conversations.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
how is Chauncey going to screw this player up?
The only person I feel safe about would be Jarris. Like,
I would say Brandon Miller because
he's not going to. Well, both of them have had both of those bodies have had track records of success. So but like, even you don't give Brandon Miller the ball and stuff like that.
See, I think he would have an effect on Jarris because Jarris needs playmaking reps as well.
Too. Yeah, but at least he's gonna play like good defense and play
so
smart.
It's the same thing I said about Dame. You can't pick a player based upon what you want to do with Dame, or you can't pick a player based upon the coach's preference, the coach's style, because fair or not, Dame's not going to be here forever, and I don't think Chauncey's going to be here forever. So you have to take the best player, and I've been saying this, I've been beating this drum, the best player that is going to fit alongside Shaden Sharp. They need to build around the 6'6", 20-year-old tantalizing shooting guard. Like this is your new cornerstone.
Yep.
The torch probably hasn't been passed yet, but is going to be passed. Like, it is going to happen. Time doesn't stop. Change is constant. It's time to accept that. It's going to be Shaden's team, not next year, maybe not the year after, but it will come in due time. But to answer your question, I think it's going to be tougher for Amin.
Yeah.
But I also think it could be tougher for Ausar because at least with the men, Dame would be able to be like, this is what I'm seeing on the floor. You could have Dame as that pseudo second assistant coach with the men. Ausar might be a little bit tougher because
Nasir Little's telling him what to do.
Learn from? Who is he going to? Is he going to learn from Cam Reddish at the 3? Is he going to learn from Nasir Little?
Yeah.
Matisse Thybulle? We don't have a small forward that he can really learn from.
We haven't had that for decades.
So I
think Nurk has to be the buddy thing if he's there. If he's there, Nurk is gonna have to big brother the shit out of both of them.
So the risk factor is high, and that's what you're gonna have to take into account regardless. And again, this is why I don't want to win now with Dame, because they're committed to Chauncey Billups. Mm-hmm. If you have 2 to 3 years, I'm not wasting one of those years seeing if Chauncey Billups can actually coach. Mm-hmm. So I'm willing to waste one of those years of maybe 10 or 12 years of a Thompson twin. Okay, Chauncey, you can't coach. Get out of here, right? Mm-hmm. So you have such a larger margin of error when you draft a 20-year-old rather than we're going all in on a 30-year-old, right? Yeah.
So
a lot of factors.
For both, let's just say both. I know that you're busy, but let's say that I feel like if you're building around Amin and Shaden, shooting has to be a priority in the other three position groups, right? And I think that's the
Absolutely.
same with the SOAR because such a small sample size of being an average shooter. So, I mean, I feel like we've lacked shooting for a few years, but I feel like if either of those two are on the team, it's like, all right, the one thing we have to look for is shooting and a little
Defense.
bit of defensive versatility.
So the reason you need defense is because if you're going to be the most athletic team, you want to get on the break. You want
Yep.
easy buckets. You want to play in transition. You want to up the pace. So defense is number one for me because that's how you're going to that's how you're going to butter your bread.
Yeah.
Shooting obviously is important, but I feel like defensively, if you can suffocate teams, I mean, defense travels, right? You should never have an off night on defense.
So
Shooting,
who's the type of center that you'd want to pair on pick and rolls with either of those two guard wings?
I mean, honestly, it's like Brooke Lopez, fantastic defense and can still stretch the floor, right?
Yeah.
He's not just in the paint crowding it up,
And he
mucking it
can
up
rebound
for.
better than Miles too.
He's a good rebound, and he's a perennial defensive player of the year candidate. Like Brooke Lopez gets is slept on so much, but he completely transformed his game into one of the most impactful centers, not named Embiid or Jokic. And people don't put him enough on the
Yeah.
top 10 list. But Brooke Lopez is exactly the archetype that I would go after. And I think,
And he'd be a vet for those young kids too.
I think you're looking at a player like Bruce Brown would be awesome at the three. You need defenders who can shoot. Um, I think Denver is a great archetype. I
Yeah.
mean, it's almost like your Jokic is now your point guard because you have a
Yeah. Yeah.
generational size of that position, but they mesh so well with one another. I think you could get like a power forward that can rebound, defend, and play make. Like Jarris be awesome.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking
Jarris
like
would be
Tari
awesome.
or Jarris would be
Like
pretty
if you
sweet.
could build a team around like Amen, Shaden, Bruce Brown, Jarris, and Brooke Lopez, like younger, like that's how
Yeah.
I would build the team.
Yeah.
Need people who can not take up a ton of usage.
Yeah,
Like the
those
problem, the problem with Dame and how he's been used, it's easy to defend and attack in the postseason because he's going to get the ball. That's how they want to run the offense. But if you have multiple avenues at getting buckets, like the Warriors, it's so hard to scheme for, to defend. And if you have a good coach, you can adjust on the fly, say they're taking this away, let's go to that. It's harder for a defense to adjust. Like you start to get into rhythm. Oh, I know they're doing this. But when an offense in the flow of the game starts to switch it up, it's really difficult for those defenses to now, switch what they're trying to do. Like it's really tough. So if you have different avenues to get buckets, that's why I love the short playmaking for Jarris. I love the floor spacing that a Brooke Lopez or a Bruce Brown would offer, and then you can just let Shaden cook.
Shaden and one of the twins cook. Like, yeah, if it was me, those two are just they are our everything. So, and I think that's how you have to develop them is like, we don't see you as no role player, six man off the bench. You're our star. Let's
No,
get you
you draft at
confident.
three. You draft at three. You're looking for a superstar. I mean,
Mm.
Joel Embiid, Michael Jordan, Jason Tatum. Just a couple of examples of the third pick. Like the third pick is so valuable, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. And it wasn't until uh, Jonathan Givony and I believe Adrian Wojnarowski were talking, and they're like, yeah, they're not just going to give this pick up. This pick is valuable. Like top three picks don't just get moved. The last one I can remember was Atlanta and Vancouver swapped Sharif Abdur-Rahim for the third pick that turned out to be Pau Gasol. I don't want to be Atlanta in this scenario. I don't want Sharif Abdur-Rahim, a nice player. Sorry, like Pascal Siakam. I'll take my chances and try and find that future Hall of Famer in Pau Gasol. So these top picks just don't get moved very often. So Portland needs to be absolutely wowed. It's not Portland adding to get the great player. It should be the other team adding to try and get that third pick because of
Absolutely.
the age, the upside,
The contract.
the team contract
Mm.
flexibility. There's so much benefits that go into drafting a player. And usually if Portland's getting a player, they've got maybe 1 or 2 years left on their contract. And at that point, they're unrestricted. And so they have to fight free agency.
Overpay.
So
Overpay.
Portland needs to drive a hard bargain just keep the pick. That's what I would do. But
Yeah.
if you're going to trade it, you need to fleece. You can't just be comfortable winning the trade. You have to fleece like Danny Ainge fleeced Tim Connolly and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And that's the mentality that Joe Cronin has to go into it. You just have to dig in your heels and say, no, we are not budging off of this asking price. We're
Mhm.
comfortable taking Scoot. We're comfortable taking B Mill. We're comfortable taking a Thompson twin. Whatever.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Do you think it's a 2-person, 3-person, 5-person draft? That's going to be my last question.
Well, let's be real. It's a one-person draft. It's Victor Wembanyama, but there are still other players. So if I can remove Wemby from the equation, I definitely do think Scoot's in a tier all by himself. But like I said, I think there's 6 guys. I think that's a 9-person draft, in my opinion. Now there are players in that would be more excited to get at number 3. And it's also why I think trading for 6 and 11, for example, is tough because 11, one of those 9 players that I like, may not make it to that number 11 spot. And now you're trying to reach. I think 10 through like 20 is like no man's land. There's a bunch of prospects that I don't love the value from 10 to 20. I love it later on in the back half.
And your board is specialized because one of the people I have at 14 is like 6 for you. So it gets
but also like I wouldn't
at
be
11.
comfortable taking Jordan Hawkins that high because I already have a shooting guard and Shaden Sharp. So like it's about roster construction right now. And if I'm having a lottery pick, I don't really want to pick a bench player. Like you have to start, even if it's best player, like it'd be a tough, awkward fit. So you have to really look at it. Who's going to be available, who's not. But I think there are 9 awesome players in this draft. Portland has to. I mean, we have Mike Schmitz. I feel very confident. I love that they took Shaden Sharp. I know you were high on him. I was even higher on him last year. They like to swing for the fences. I mean, they're very fine going.
The 2 swing for fences picks are these Thompson twins for sure.
I think so. And if you're murky on Brandon Miller's legal situation, if Scoot Henderson gets taken by the Hornets, I think the Twins just offer more upside than I think the rest of those prospects in the top 9. Cam Whitmore potentially could offer the same amount of upside, but he's undersized.
I think the Twins are easier to it's easier to get the upside where Cam has more issues.
So I think I mean just I right now I'm all aboard. If Scoot's gone, I'd love to take him in and see, because we do have a good development, and I trust Schmitz. Like he's smart. It's nice to trust a guy in the scouting department. Like
totally.
It's great.
So I think first round, like Wemby is an S tier first overall pick, but there's guys like Anthony Bennett that are F tier first round picks. I think that this particular draft has 2 high value first overall picks. Like, Brandon Miller would obviously beat out Anthony Bennett. But I think that Scoot is on the level of a Cade Cunningham, a Zion Williamson easily. So like the fact that this draft has 2 guys that most drafts we would take 1 easily without even thinking it shows the ability in this draft to have top tier talent when there's 2 elite first overall guys. But it is getting kind of late in the day. I think we should wrap this up. We're available on iTunes, Stitcher, Instagram Reels. We've been in that, TikTok. But yeah, obviously listen to the full, audio podcast on iTunes. Leave a nice review. And thank you for listening. We are out of here. Do some research on those Twins. There's some very interesting players. Bruce.